As Shatterline's early access period has come to a close, the game's servers have recently been taken offline on August 1st as the dev team switches focus to full release on Epic Games later this year. However, full release is not going to come without its challenges. See, during early access, the dev team could mainly focus on improving the game, but in full release, they're going to have to focus on building a player base, keeping that player base around, because they're no longer in a period of development, they're in a period of, this is our published game, we need to have people play it so that we can stay in business. With that in mind, here's a list of small changes that can be made to help make Shatterline the best it can be. This list is in no particular order, more of just a conglomerate of different small things I've noticed throughout my over 1,000 hours of gameplay that I think should be tweaked slightly to make the user experience better. So without further ado, let's get into number 1, which is to remove the auto queue feature and replace it with a countdown returning you to the lobby. At the end of every PvP match, you are thrown into the end screen and then you are set up to automatically queue into a new game. However, this feature does not really work as it's intended. So basically the player is in the end screen and then they have a choice either to go to lobby by clicking or they're put into an auto queue. This means that if someone just gets up and walks away from their computer, for instance, they're automatically queued into a new game even though they had no intention of even being there. This leads to a lot of AFK players in lobbies and people that are thrown into games they didn't even really sign up for. I think this system should be changed to where the countdown is just a countdown to return you to the lobby rather than to put you in a different match. Number 2 is loot box collection. At the end of several matches, whether it be PvE or PvP, you are awarded these little loot crates containing different items. These can be resources, they can be cosmetics, they can be little bundles of different things. I'm saying basically just put all of these off to the side and then you can open them at the end whenever you want, because a lot of people don't really like sitting through these animations when they're trying to get into another game, they're trying to join their friend's party. They can't do any of that if they're sitting through a bunch of animations. Just allow them to collect and then you open them while you're in queue, for instance. For number 3, we have adding the Karambit to shooting range. The Karambit is this knife that you run around with in PvP to increase your movement speed. And I think it's odd how we don't have access to this in the shooting range to test it. So it'd be a very simple change, just add this to the shooting range so that we can test it without being an actual PvP match. Number 4, we have to display player account level. So I don't know if many of you guys know this, but FragLab actually has access to an account level that is hidden for some reason. Why would it be hidden? Maybe they can tell us that because I'm not quite sure, but if it's something that you can progressively increase throughout your playtime as you gain XP, then just have this publicly displayed so that people can maybe achieve for a higher level and also be able to see other people's level and maybe judge, who should take the lead in expedition, for example. Next up on the list at number 5 is an account stats page refresh. So currently when you go on your profile, you have an account stats page, but unfortunately some of these labels to describe your stats are incorrect. For example, it says kills plus assists, when actually this is just kills. And the same thing for the ratio. It says kills, assists, ratio, but in reality it only factors in kills, not assists. Same for, different things. People have reported that maybe the hours are off. I think there's a bug with Season Charlie where the hours weren't displayed correctly. So if we could just kind of fix all these issues, maybe add some extra stats they might have access to, and make this stats page more reliable and also more relevant to what is actually being shown. For number 6, we have a dungeon intel tooltip. So I think this is a point of confusion for a lot of players, new players especially. They don't know how to access dungeons. And it is kind of a backwards system. You have to go to a refill ammo point to buy dungeon intel to figure out where the dungeons are so you can access them. So I propose basically just adding a little tooltip on the expedition loading screen that says something like, in order to access dungeons, you need to purchase dungeon intel from the refill point to know where they are. This can also be added to the expedition tutorial, but I think a small little text bubble would do the similar effect with much less effort. Number 7 is an expedition map. This one is pretty self-explanatory. We currently have an expedition map, but it is very low quality, as I'm sure you can see on screen. So I think it would be nice if we had the developers, one of the artists, make an actual map of expedition. And on this map, we can include things like spawns for the different bosses, spawns for dungeons, spawns for different activities, maybe some guides, where you can get certain resources depending on the sector. Just little things like that I think would go a long way, because it feels odd how we don't have any kind of map to use for navigation or really anything at all. At number 8, we have changing the extracted gear text. Currently, when you load into Expedition and try to gain your extracted gear from your previous run, you walk up to the little box and it says pick one, and then you have your extracted gear below that. This pick one item is misleading. It should be something like collect extracted gear, because you're not actually picking one. You get to pick all of them, but it's just one at a time. So just say something like that, cuts out the confusion. People won't feel like they're having to choose when they're really not. Number 9 on my list is the ability to queue for multiple versions of Expedition at the same time. As you can see, the Expedition mode was split recently into 3 different sections. We have challenging, we have normal, and we have extreme. So it would be nice, because sometimes the queue times get super long, to be able to just queue for 2 of, if not all 3 of the modes, just via a little selection menu, and you select the 2 or 3 expeditions you want to queue for, and then you are thrown into queue and you're able to matchmake for any of the expeditions. This might not be an issue with more players in the future, but it's just something nice to have, because if, for example, you're trying to queue for a dungeon and you want to queue challenging and extreme, you might be queuing challenging while some other guy is queuing extreme, and you guys will never matchmake because you're not in the same queue. So just having the ability to queue for both, so that way, either way you get a match, would be much appreciated. Number 10 is simply providing us with a list of all currently available dungeons and sector bosses. Right now in Expedition, if you want to know all the bosses available, you have to kind of just play and find out. There's no sort of resource where you have a list of everything that's in the game. And we can't use patch notes because sometimes stuff gets added and removed and we're not even told about it in the patch notes. So if we could just get like a formal list from the developers about the active bosses and dungeons, so that way maybe you can look at this list that's updated regularly as changes are made, and maybe see something new on there that you want to try and go find, and you're not just wandering around hoping something new might be added. This also helps us figure out if maybe a boss is just rare or hard to come by, as opposed to it just not existing anymore. And the same goes for dungeons. We've had dungeons in the past that were buggy and got removed and re-added about a dozen times. For example, the Chaser Hunt dungeon was taken out, added back in, taken out. So if we could just know whenever stuff is actually in the game, so that way we're not wasting time looking for something that doesn't even exist. And that brings me to number 11, which is holistic and accurate patch notes every time a change is made within Shatterline. In the past, the developers have claimed that certain changes don't need patch notes, they're minor changes, but I think this needs to be rethought. We need to know basically when anything is changed, whether it be how small, how big, doesn't matter, especially when big changes occur. For example, we had the Goliath boss added and we were not told anything. Then we had a Bastion mission added, and one of the developers had to post in lore discussion that it was even added because we didn't even have a patch note for that. So at least make a scale of what's patch note worthy and what's not, but ideally just figure out what you've changed and report it. It really shouldn't be that difficult. If something is changed, no matter how small it may seem to the developers, we as players want to know, so that way we have logs to look back on. And also, if something is added, we want to know so we can go play it. Also, this helps us know for sure that something was changed, not that it just feels different to us, and even though they didn't even change anything. Because we've had that happen in the past too, where players are saying, well, this feels stronger now, and the developers didn't even change anything. It was just the placebo effect. Seeing as patch notes can be done by just a couple of people and are very simple to write out what you've changed, I think this should be a non-negotiable heading into full release. Next up at number 12, we have publicly displayed PvE perk prices. Currently on the PvE perk menu, you have to have the previous tier of a perk unlocked before you're able to see the price for the next perk. Now currently we have a spreadsheet that people can use if they want to look up prices of certain things, but why not do this natively in the game? Just list the price under each perk. Why keep it a secret? People want to know how much it's going to cost to fully upgrade a path before investing into it at all. At number 12, we have an owned marking in cosmetic boxes. In these cosmetic boxes, there can be 60 items, 70 items. Some of these nameplate boxes have hundreds of items. It would be nice to know how many you already have in your inventory and how many left there are for you to unlock. As shown here, I actually own all of these items, but I have no indicator that that's the case. I had to go through and manually look through my inventory and cross-match it with the box and see which ones I already have. So why not just add a little indicator, a little owned icon, and then also add a counter out to the side. So it'll be like, you own 70 out of 90, or something similar based on the current numbers. I don't know the exact numbers, but you can basically show how many you have left to collect. At number 14, we have a reason to play the PvE missions in order that they were created / the order of the timeline events in Shatterline. For example, the Quicksand mission probably wouldn't make much sense to the average player if they hadn't played Stormbringer. So we need to figure out a way to present these missions in an order that would make sense so you can actually follow the story. It makes no sense to play Cyber Trail before Border Control. It makes no sense to play Sunken Lab before Red Lake. There are certain order to these things. They have to be played in order for them to make any sense. So if we could just kind of rearrange the UI maybe, or lock certain missions behind a prerequisite of playing a different mission beforehand, something like that can make sure that people are playing these missions in order to get the full experience. Number 15 is to add the text chat to the lobby / home screen. Currently, the text chat is only available in matches during PvP and PvE, so if we could just take the text chat UI and everything the same and add it to the lobby so you can chat with your teammates without having to use Discord or Steam messaging or some other third-party app, you can do so right in the game. Even between matches, you can figure out what you want to play, what you want to queue for, etc., etc. Number 16 is to add the ability to skip certain cutscenes in Expedition and episodes, or in fact all cutscenes for that matter. Some of these cutscenes have been seen by old players hundreds of times. We don't need to see them anymore. Add a little option to the bottom right of the screen. People can vote to skip the cutscene, maybe using one of the F keys, maybe just a random button they can bind to whatever they want. And if you get all 3 people in the party to vote, or however many people are in the party, if everybody in the party votes, then the cutscene is skipped and you go right into the action. This shouldn't be, hopefully not too difficult to implement, and it would save a lot of time of watching the same cutscenes over and over and over again that we've already seen. We're just here to get the rewards and get out. Number 17 is the ability to see all tasks that you currently have to complete on the in-match UI. Right now, you can only see up to 5 weekly tasks, for example. So whenever you have a task you want to work on, but it's not in your 5 closest to being completed tasks, even if you're in like a PvE match and you have a PvP task, it'll still show up there. So we need an ability to either see all tasks that are currently available to you, or we need an ability to select which tasks are part of the group of 5 that are shown to you on the in-match UI. This is so you can track your progress throughout the match, and once you finish a task, it'll pop up on the side, and you'll know to move on to the next task, and you can selectively choose which ones you want to actively pursue rather than having a whole list of PvP tasks, and some PvE tasks you know exist, and you're in a PvE match, but you don't know what they are, so you can't try and do them. And lastly, we have a favorites tab of weapons. As you can see on the weapon UI, right now there is a list of recent weapons used by the player. If we could just change this to a favorites option, and in your armory you select 5 or 6 or 7 weapons to be your favorite weapons, and they appear at the top of the scroll list, this would be very beneficial because it would save you the effort of having to scroll all the way down to, say, the SMG category, the shotgun category, and then finally select your weapon. Just have your ability to pin it to the top of favorites and then select it from there. So there you have it, a list of 18 small minor details that could really help enhance the player experience. I know this game has had a lot of polishing, quote unquote, over the last couple of years, but I think we can make some small changes to keep players around, make their lives easier, some more quality of life fixes, and maybe there's more that I missed. You guys can let me know about those in the comments, and also what you guys think of the ones that I've proposed, and hopefully the dev team will read these and go from there on implementing these changes. Some of these things I know would be very, very quick fixes. Some of the other ones, it kind of just depends on what's easy, what's hard for them to do. I think everything I've proposed is pretty reasonable, but again, we don't know the back end side, so it could actually be a lot more work, and in which case it may not be worth some of these more difficult changes. But nonetheless, here's my proposal of ideas that could help Shatterline succeed in full release, and I hope that it's taken into consideration. And with that, I'll thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and see you later.